Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu, Ma Kaschid Dukbhag Bhavet. Om Asatoma Sadgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma Mamritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So I think this is like our 50th satsanga. Doesn't matter anymore. Not going to count. Um, Let me share the screen and we'll continue from where we left off. But just Nikita and I were having a sort of a side conversation about these prakriyas and how it works. So when we talk about Vedanta, you have niti, which a lot of people place, I would say, little unnecessary emphasis upon. Niti is negation, the process of negation. That I am not the body, I am not the mind, I am not this. There are many beautiful stotrams where this has been emphasized, like you have Atma Shatkam, and then you have Dasha Shloki also, I believe, by Adi Shankaracharya. I'll confirm once again. And then, of course, you have this Prakriya, which is somewhere in the Brahadharika Upanishad as well, the Neti Prakriya. So that's very important. But what happens is, when we've oftentimes talked about the distinction between traditional Advaita and this neo-Advaita, modern Advaita sort of nonsensical version that has become popular in the last 200 years, 150 years rather. So in this neo-Advaita, what happens is we dismiss Ishvara, we dismiss our roles, we dismiss Dharma, we dismiss society and certain obligations that one has towards society. We essentially dismiss everything that we refer to as mithya, as non-existent or as an illusion. And what that ends up doing is it ends up appealing to a broad section that, okay, so ultimately the purpose of Vedanta is only negation. I only need to negate that I am not this, I am not this, I am not this, I am not this. And ultimately what you are left with is the self. That is not quite right. Because if you negate and you negate and you negate, there is nothing to reveal what you are. By revealing what I am not, it is not sufficient to recognize what I am. For example, let's say, you have a dark room. And now in that room, let's just say you are groping around in the dark with your hands. You are taking away one object after the other. You're taking away, negating. You take away the stool, you take away the chair, you take away the toys, you take away the desk, you take away your computer, you take everything away. And then ultimately, what's left is not revealed because there is no pramana that's operating over there. So therefore, you could conclude many things. One thing you could conclude is that I am not existent. Non-existence. There's non-existence that's left after you take away everything that exists. So that will take us into this whole cartoonish Shunyavada territory. It could take you to this Kshanika Vijnanavada territory. It could take you to a nihilistic territory. It could take you to an atheistic territory. A lot of different places you can go. You will not stumble into the self by negating everything that is the non-self. Let's put it that way. With me so far, does that make sense? Because if I negate away everything that I am not, then how do I account for the things which I have negated? First of all, you can't account for it. So what do you have to say? You're forced to say this doesn't exist. It's an illusion. It's a rubbish. It's just an illusion. It's a mithya in the wrong sense of the word, which is it is false. So that's what happens when we get into only the negation territory without the revealing territory. You are revealed a certain vision of the self through the Upanishads. And that revelation is in the form of Sarvatma Buddhi, Sarvatma Bhava. So the Sarvatma Bhava is the content of the Mahavakyas. See, these Mahavakyas that we have, they reveal not the non-self or the absence of the non-self. They are not negating, they are revealing. They are revealing a positive entity. And when I say a positive entity, I mean something that exists, an existence That is you. That existence is you. So take a Mahavakya, Aham Brahmasmi. What does it negate? It doesn't negate anything over there. Tattvamasi, what does it negate? It reveals that you are. I am Atma Brahman. What does it reveal? It's a relationship between the self and Brahman. Every Mahavakya is a revelation between the self and the whole, and not as two independent objects, but they're equated as one. There's an equal to sign, and that equal to sign is in the form of Asi. Tat is one side of the equation. Tvam, well, let me stop sharing the screen because this might be a good discussion as we spoke about last time. So Tat is one side of the equation. Tvam is the other side of the equation. The entire focus of Vedanta, first of all, is to reveal to you the nature of the Tat, the nature of the Tvam. Sometimes you start with the Tat, then you come towards the Tvam. Sometimes you start with the Tvam, then you come towards the Tat. It doesn't matter where you begin. What matters is you're trying to get to the foundation, the basis of what this Tat and Tvam is really all about. Then finally, when you get to their core, you see their fundamental being as non-separate, as non-different. That equation, that equivalence over there of Asi becomes relevant. And it is a vision. It is not connecting two things which are disjoint or separated somehow, conceptually, through space, through time, as an object. No. It is revealing the same thing as the very same thing. And so Tattvamasi as though become one. It's all one. There's nothing but you, the self alone. And that revelation is the pramana buddhi that's operating when it occurs in one's vritti. When that, I guess, buddhi takes the form of that vritti as seen by the guru. And what is seen by the guru is the self as the whole, as a non-dual, one without a second, limitless, impartite, whole self. That is I. And so the negation part, so now we come back to the negation. Why is negation given importance? Because what happens is we have come a very long way in life, picking up a lot of concepts about ourselves, wrong concepts. I am like this, I look like this, I look like that, I have this, I have that, I have this well accomplished, I'm such a loser, etc. etc. So these are notions that we have come to cultivate through our experiences, through our conversations, through a certain social engineering based on a society that is not privy to this wisdom. And so, because they are not privy to this wisdom, and because we are growing up, and it is a very natural conclusion that, of course, I am the body because I'm able to shake my limbs and I'm able to do this as a child, and etc. etc. So, of course, you will start identifying with these things because this beautiful Shrishti is such that the identification is a very natural process. But a certain amount of de identification is required for one to gain objectivity that this body that I take to be myself, that alone I am not. This mind that I take to be myself, that by itself I am not. This buddhi, this manaha, this chittani, this ahankara, all of these things that I take to be myself, my prana, the way I look, the way I speak, the way I think, all of these things that I am not. So that is the negation part because you're creating a space between the witness self, the witness consciousness, the sakshi, and the things which are witnessed, the drishya. So the drik and the drishya, there is an as though separation that is created in one's understanding. Clear so far? Okay. So as that separation is created, if we stop there, we have ended up in the world of duality only. Some people say, no, it's Advaita. No, it's not Advaita because then you can refer to yourself as an individual Sakshi. I am another Sakshi. Somebody else is a third Sakshi. There are billions and billions of Sakshis everywhere because each are individually aware of their body, mind, sense complex, respectively, and their environment and their family and friends and whatnot. And this applies not just to humans, but to bacteria and to other creatures too. So, this Sakshi Bhava is only one step, but it does not complete the loop. The loop only gets completed when the Neti Neti approach is married to the Sarvatma Bhava approach, which is that I am the whole, which means that this body that you negated, the body, I am not the body, but the body is I. I am not the mind, but the mind is I. I am not the vritti, but the vritti is I. I am not this world around me. This world is I. So you are first creating a separation, which is not to say that this is different from me. Rather, that separation says, I am not that one thing alone, isolated. I am not just this body that people have learned to call Prashant. But Prashant is I. But I am not this body. If I say that this body is not me, that is a problem. If I say I am not the body, that is correct. But then what is the body? What is the reality of this body? The body has its basis in some reality. It has its existence due to something. And that core upon which the body, mind, sense, the whole universe, in fact, is resting, is the self, is existence, consciousness, limitlessness, which is the self, which is Atma, which is Brahman. And therefore, just as every single wave in the ocean is nothing but water, but the water is not any one single wave, that way, I am not the body, but the body is I. You are not the body, but the body is I. Everything is not the self, but the self is the basis of everything. The self is not any one thing, but the self is the truth of it all. So that is the Sarvatma Bhava that has to take place. This is the final appreciation of Vedanta, all of the sadhana culminating together in this knowledge that one cultivates through Shravanam. And this Shravanam is taking the form of a vritti. That vritti, that the Shravanam, the words of the Guru are a pramana. But the words of the Guru synchronize with my buddhi, with my understanding of the words of the Guru, and it is the meaning, the truth of those words which shine as a truth in my mind. And that truth of the self shines as self knowledge. And that is knowledge, that is Atmajnana, Brahmajnana. And that leaves the buddhi without a trace. Because it's not that the Atmajnana is sitting there permanently as a vritti. I am Brahman, I am Brahman, I am Brahman. No. It delivers the goods and it goes. So my uh, dad was listening to a pravachan, and he was talking about it that there's this one great Mahatma from Sadhana Sadan. So he gave this example that when you are in the forest, it's not the axe head itself that is responsible for cutting the trees, but it is the wood that you need to swing in order for the axe to be able to do the work. And so the same wood can also be made from the trees that have fallen. So in one sense, the wood is helping cut the other wood, which helps cut away and clear the trees so that the light can pour down into the forest floor. So if you think about it, the vritti that I have, that I am limited, I am small, I'm useless, I'm insignificant, that is a vidya vritti. That is also vritti. Avidya is a vritti. Okay. It bubbles up in the form of I am this, I am that, I am stupid, etc. It bubbles up in the form of self-ignorance. But it is there having its basis in the form of a vritti. Avidya vritti bubbles up. Now, every vritti, as the saying goes, you cannot kill an idea. You can only replace it with a better idea. The same applies for avidya as well. Avidya is an idea, it's a false idea about the self, it's a notion. If avidya were true, and when I say true in the sense that if it were revealing the truth, then it cannot be negated because the truth cannot be negated. See, if you teach a child 2 plus 2 equals 4, you cannot negate that as a truth, but you can negate 2 plus 2 equals 5 because there's no theorem that can prove 2 plus 2 equals 5, but there is a certain mathematical framework that can prove 2 plus 2 equals 4. So when 2 plus 2 equals 4 knowledge comes in touch with 2 plus 2 equals 5, the 4 wala will replace the 5. It will replace it because the truth has to shine. It will override the falsity, the falsehood. So in the same way, avidya vritti, that I am a limited self, etc., that vritti cannot but be negated when exposed to the jnana vritti that I am this whole. I am the limitless self. And so the jnana vritti comes in the form of a vritti. It bumps away the avidya vritti as such, as though, just as a matter of example, imagination. There's no fight, there's no battle happening. The jnana vritti is the knowledge of the whole. The avidya vritti is the false notion that I am limited. When one comes, the other has to naturally go. It's not that one is bumping away the other, but it naturally just disappears because there has no space to exist. You cannot entertain two opposite notions about the same thing. In my mind, I can either have 2 plus 2 equals 5, or I can have 2 plus 2 equals 4. But I cannot have both simultaneously. Agreed? And when the former can get replaced by the latter, which is the 5 vritti can get replaced by the 4 vritti, but not the other way around also. Because you're not born with knowledge and then suddenly you become ignorant after that. You're born ignorant and knowledge takes place after that. If knowledge were there first and then you became ignorant afterwards, then what is the guarantee that after you're ignorant and then you gain knowledge again, the ignorance will not come back again? What guarantee? Therefore, when knowledge takes place, the ignorance is permanently erased because there is no space for that falsity anymore, because the truth is revealed, the truth is self-revealing. Any form of truth, even at a mithya level, reveals itself. And you cannot unsee it. See, Karna spent his whole life thinking that he is the son of a Sutaputra, right? But all it took was one statement, one Mahavakya of sorts that no, you are Kunti Putra, Karna. And then there's no way he can go back to the old. He could live with the ignorance forever if it was not revealed to him. But once it is revealed to him, he cannot fool himself once again. That's the beauty of it. So this avidya vritti is a vritti. Jnana vritti is a vritti. Avidya vritti continues to confuse us and confound us in life and make us feel miserable. Jnana vritti in the form of, Arey, you are complete, you are whole, what is there? There's nothing other than the self. Jnana vritti. It comes. There's a replacement therapy. And the replacement is complete and then never goes away. You are whole, you are full, you are complete. Now it's not going to ring in your mind constantly. But now when you have an interaction, when you have a situation, etc., with different people and different events in life, you will not feel the pangs of limitation because the person who felt limited is no longer there. The person has disappeared because the person who felt limited was also a notion. The person that I am as an individual is a notion. Now I am no longer the individual person, I am the whole. My ahankara has been replaced with a more so quote unquote enlightened ahankara, which doesn't see myself as small anymore. And so it's almost like I have transformed, not that I have become Brahman. No, you don't become Brahman. You are Brahman, you recognize that fact. Whether you know you're Brahman or not, you are always Brahman. If you don't know you're Brahman, also you're Brahman. If you know you're Brahman, also you're Brahman. But the one who doesn't know has all sorts of complexities and misery to accompany his life. And the one who knows is free. Because who is miserable? Not I. Can Brahman be miserable? No. So that is the freedom. That is the jnana vritti. Does this process make more sense now compared to last week? Any thoughts, questions here? Let's spend some time here as we discussed. All clear?
I have some questions.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know if anybody else could relate, but how do you try to keep jnana vritti always at the forefront in everyday life when you like face challenges? So, just an example. I understand what was said just now, but sometimes at work, the stress gets the better of me and I see myself limited then. So it's difficult in that situation to always remember, well, okay, don't take this on. You know that you are not this. Yeah, I don't know if anybody else.
Pretty sure everybody has that issue, including myself. This
Yes.
is
So
not uncommon. This is the most common thing, right? Which is that, okay, now I've studied Vedanta, but how do I,
keep it
keep
at the
this knowledge
forefront
alive
and
in the
right.
first place? See, that is where Nidhyasana comes into the picture. What Pujya Swamiji says is knowledge takes place as a matter of Shravanam, right? That we've discussed. But what happens is the abidance in this knowledge requires some amount of repetition of that vision. And it's not a repetition in terms of I am Brahman, I am Brahman, I am Brahman. That is what a parrot does. We're not parrots. Repetition as the meaning of the self continues to bubble up in one's vritti through, at first, a deliberate contemplation. And in due course, it becomes natural. The momentum, the push of the deliberate contemplation continues to push that car forward. It's like, think of a fan. It takes some energy to start rotating. But then you shut the fan off, it doesn't stop immediately. It just keep going on and on and on. So for some people, which is pretty much most people, which is us, even if these teachings have been captured accurately, which itself is a big deal, okay? To capture these teachings accurately in one's mind, to see that vision as the guru sees it, it's not easy. It requires a very profound appreciation. But let's assume that that has happened. Then you constantly contemplate upon that truth that you are, the truth of yourself. You listen to those guided meditation classes of Puja Swamiji. Some of you might have heard it, I'm sure. Some of you have heard it, I think. Um, you contemplate on the meaning of the Mahavakyas and you see it and you keep seeing it and you see it and you see it and you see it to the extent that it starts becoming a very natural thing for you. And the more you stay in touch with this vision with some amount of deliberation, the greater will be its staying power. So small incidents will be insignificant. But now it's possible that something big might happen in your life, and then again, it can shake you up. But that firmness will keep growing, where even the bigger incidents get swallowed into the whole, if that makes sense. But that is a gradual process of firmness, abidance that has to grow and grow and grow. And the only way it can grow is by repeated exposure to the teachings, to the words of the Guru, to one's contemplation, etc. That is a Nidhyasana process. I do not recommend people to do Nidhyasana until they are certain that their Shravanam is clear. If their Shravanam is not clear and they are contemplating on the wrong vision of the self, then what they are going to do is create a habit out of a wrong version of this knowledge, the wrong vision of the self. And then that's going to be very hard to eradicate. Because anything that does not end in, culminate in seeing oneself as a limitless whole is a flawed vision. And that could also mean that I see myself as a Sakshi of this individual body, or I see myself as a detached observer, etc., etc. Because there also, if you see, observation is an action in some sense. If you, well, even if it's not an action, even if it's a passive observation, like, knowledge just takes place, sure, but it's still confined as a limited entity, body, mind, sense complex. I can't observe what's happening at your place. So if I treat myself as the observer or as the witness, that is also a problem. And some people, unfortunately, I no longer give advice like that. But it's like, after years and years of Vedanta, they still reduce the self to an individual witness. That's a problem. So it's very, and how might that have happened? Maybe because of some conditioning that they might have put themselves through at some point in the past, some witness-based meditation, etc., etc. That's why if you see Pujya Swamiji, he follows a very basic first principles based teaching. He goes back to the first principles. Has anybody heard of what first principles are? Like, generally speaking, usually you try things out. It could be an engineering problem, it could be a sociology problem, whatever it could be, and people try to figure out how can we improve upon the existing models that we have of looking at the world and whatnot. What one should typically do is go back to first principles, things that we can all axiomatically agree upon. Anybody familiar with mathematical axioms? Anyone? No? Teachers? Aparnaji, mathematics you teach? So, anyway, you have these axioms where you can go back to something as a foundational truth, and you can start building from those axioms and create your new theorems and new proofs, etc., etc. So, for example, just to give a Euclidean geometry example, the shortest point between shortest distance between 2 points is a line, right? Euclidean geometry. I'm not talking about like uh, three-dimensional Einsteinian geometry or whatever. Right, that's called Riemann geometry when you talk about three dimensions and curvatures and whatnot. But on a flat piece of paper, the shortest distance between 2 points is a line. It's the shortest distance. You can't like do this and say is the shortest distance. So that is a first principle. And then from that you can start building new theorems, right? Or another theorem would be that two parallel lines do not meet. Again, flat surface, not three-dimensional. Three-dimensional, they'll meet. Something will happen. That's why if you see these lines meet at the poles, if you draw these latitude grids around the Earth, they meet at the south and the north pole. But if it was a flat Earth, as some people believe, then they will not meet. So, okay, so those are axioms. So, when you talk about first principles, what are the first principles of Vedanta? Where do you find them? You find them in the Upanishads. You find them in the teachings and the bhashyas of Adi Shankaracharya. So, what Pujya Swamiji always does is he gets back, he distills the teaching to the core vision of the Upanishads of Brahma Vidya. You always go back to that. And if your vision or my vision or any Tom, Dick, and Harry's vision is not aligned to the vision of the Upanishads, then that is a faulty vision. And no amount of Nididasana on a faulty vision is going to free you as a person. In fact, it can set you back many years in the past. It can even erase the I guess learnings that you might have encountered because you are contemplating on something that is false. And it can create a new conditioning that will be very hard to erase. So I don't prescribe Nididasana to anybody until they are absolutely certain. And that's how do you become absolutely certain? A guru will validate for you. The guru will know what you understand. Your understanding has to be in synchronicity with the guru. And once they are synchronous, only then should you proceed forward with contemplation. Until then, keep asking questions. But how does this work? And how do I understand this? And how do I see that? And can you help me with this? Keep asking questions to the teacher until you're sure that the vision has been cultivated well. So Shravanam is really key throughout this whole process. And why I say Shravanam is so important is because even if you are exposed to the teaching and you have a clear understanding of it, the repeated Shravanam will ultimately become Nidhyasana. Because now your mind is not focused on trying to understand it. Because you already understand it, now your mind will be in listening mode. It will be receptive and the knowledge will take place. The Nidhyasana will happen simultaneously with Shravanam. And you will find that as your exposure grows, your Shravanam starts taking the form of Nidhyasana. So Shravanam is ultimately the most important thing that you can do as a student. A good question. Any? Oh yeah. Then let's say if you have a difficult situation at work, like I said, this abundance has to grow through repeated exposure. Abhyasa. Abhyasa is repetition. It helps to have some auto suggestion words in your mind that can take you back to reflecting upon the teachings. Create a habit, whatever that word may be, purnoham or asangoham, or maybe I'm uninvolved, I'm not involved in all of this, right? Asangoham, because the Atma touches everything, but it is not touched by anything. Even the Gita, Bhagavad says something that I am in everything, or all beings are in me, but I am not touched by any one being, something like that, right? That's what Bhagavad indicates in the Gita also, which means that the self is a truth of everything, but no one thing can impact the self. So have that kind of a vision or a buzzword in your mind, some auto suggestion, where it takes you back to what you learned in Shravanam, so that even in that difficult situation, you're able to have a presence of mind. And that also you have to work on and cultivate, so that that auto suggestion word comes to your mind when trouble pops up. So, this is good to have even between a husband and a wife, for that matter, or with somebody with whom you might have a conflict or whatever. That if you find that there is a conflict situation, just have an auto suggestion that you will say a certain word, and that will take you both back to an objective frame of mind where you can resolve this matter later. And make it a funny word. Don't make it some word that you use on a day-to-day basis. Use a silly word, because silly words are very good for auto suggestions, because you will never use it in a different context. And so you know exactly what you need to do when you listen to that word. So create a word like that. Okay. Any other thoughts, questions? Is this vision getting clearer? Like, or did you feel that there is still some ambiguity? Anybody? Okay. Okay. So, sorry, you were saying something? No? Okay, never mind. So with this context of what we've covered, let's read those last two paragraphs, or not paragraphs, but last two sections again from last week. And this time it will sit in your mind well. Okay, let me open it up. Can you see the screen? No? 1 second. Okay, can you see it now? Would somebody like to read?
I can read.
Okay.
Oh, I don't know if you need to scroll up a bit or.
I think that was just the title.
Okay, right on. Now we can bring in this imagery into the opening scene of the Gita. Here, the charioteer is Lord Krishna, the Guru. He keeps the horses under control, thereby keeping the chariot under control. Krishna, being a jnani, his mind and senses are under his control. He has absolute mastery over them. The student who is a karma yogi too has a buddhi, and that has the mind and senses under its control. Now, the student's buddhi is not different from the guru's buddhi. When such a
Buddhi, Buddhi.
buddhi is
No, no,
exposed to
no,
the
not D, Buddhi, D.
buddhi,
D.
buddhi,
Better.
rewind. Now, the student's buddhi is not different from the guru's buddhi. When such a buddhi is exposed to the pramana taught by the guru. Therefore, such a buddhi exposed to the teaching can itself be likened to the guru. Although we say that the pramana is Vedanta, it is really a thought, a vritti, that is the pramana. Pramana is that which gives rise to knowledge. For example, the eyes are not the final pramana for seeing. The vritti is the final pramana, inasmuch as it is the final cause for knowledge. To see a flower, you must have a flower vritti. It is this flower vritti that gives rise to the knowledge of the flower seen. That is what is meant by pramana. A vritti is born out of a certain situation and becomes the pramana. We say that ears and eyes are the pramana, but in the final analysis, vritti alone is the pramana. The mind, being the place where the vritti occurs, is called antakarana, meaning inner instrument. When you are exposed to a teacher or the teaching, your buddhi, the intellect, assumes the very form of the pramana, the teaching. Therefore, the guru's buddhi or the teaching and your buddhi become one and the same. This Guru Buddhi tells us you are that Tattvam Asi. Here, the Guru Buddhi is turned towards Arjuna, who represents the confused Antakarana, the ego or one's notion of I. Arjuna was definitely confused. He had great sorrow and he was being told Tattvam Asi. That is why he asked so many questions in the 17 chapters that followed. Exposed to the teaching, one's own buddhi assumes the very meaning of the teaching and thereby becomes the guru to oneself. If your buddhi does not know this fact, tattvamasi, it cannot tell you. It cannot tell you anything more than what it knows. That is why continually asking, "Who am I?" does not work. Nothing can happen because you do not know what you do not know. Someone has to teach you. You cannot simply ask, "Who am I?" and expect to get an answer because the I that is always present is the one asking the question. How will the answer to such a question come? You cannot hope to stumble upon the fact. The fact is you. Therefore, you are not going to stumble upon an answer that is anything more than what you already know. The only way an answer can be obtained is by this buddhi, meaning this shastra pointing towards the confused jiva and saying, "You are the whole Param Brahma," as we shall see. Thus, the whole Gita can be presented through the Krishna Arjuna chariots scene.
Very good.
Go back to
So see,
this.
this sort of ties everything back together based on what we discussed. The vrittis, the buddhi, the mahavakya, the guru, the student, the shavanam. All of these things come together as you. And what we've done also is an example of repetition, right? We did this paragraph chapter section last time, and then we contemplated it throughout this session today, and then we reread it again. And does it make more sense now? Is it clearer? Do you see it also more clearly? Right? And you see it more clearly because this is the gift of abhyasa. In Vedanta, abhyasa is critical. It is the most important thing you can really do. Repetition, repetition, repetition. It is not a defect. If you're writing a book, if you're writing a mathematical book or a scientific book or whatever, literature, grammar, whatever it may be, repetition is a great defect because you don't want to be repetitive. You don't want to um, sort of be redundant, which I just was, right? Repetitive, redundant. Again, same thing. But when it comes to Vedanta, no amount of repetition is is a bad thing. In fact, it is encouraged. And then you have to ask yourself, why is it encouraged? Because when every other experience in life attempts to override the truth of who I am based on our interactions, etc., you can understand that we need to sort of come back and detox a little bit from these falsities, these wrong notions about who I am. And then at some point, for a Jivan Mukta, for a Jnani, you hit a tipping point in the scale. There's a tipping point. Anybody is familiar with tipping points? So tipping points are things which you cannot turn back from. So imagine that you have a scale. There's like a weight over here, heavy weight. Then you start putting some weight over here, no difference. It's still going to be down. You put a little bit more weight over here, no difference, no difference, no difference. Put some more weight, maybe it'll slant a little bit. Finally, you put a little bit of it's exactly flat at this point, the scale, because the scales are balanced. Now you put a small little 1 gram weight over here, it tips over. There is a tipping point that you cannot uh, return back to it at that point. It's finished. The scale has tipped over. So in Vedanta also, there is a certain point at which the jnana overpowers. The jnana vritti is so profoundly embedded in one's vision that every other competing notion of who I am gets integrated within the purview of the whole. Does that make sense? It gets subsumed within the whole. It gets swallowed into the whole to the point where you can never go back to seeing yourself as a limited entity. It never changes after that. Your whole. That is why a jnani can never become ignorant again. The tipping point has been passed. So through repeated exposure, one day you will find that I don't need to repeat this anymore. I already see that I am the whole, and there's no way I can go back. So that is the fruit of this teaching. This jnana phala, that you are free. So yeah, continue studying Vedanta. If you don't have a discipline or a routine, please consider having one and make daily progress just in your vision of the whole that you are. You don't have to become the whole. That's the best part. It's already you. It's just a matter of discovering it and staying with it. Okay, so we'll close off on that. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. So I have a small idea. Let me close off the recording just a moment.